Hi, I'm Andrew Rich, and if you're like me, you look at the state of modern wrestling discourse and think, wow, what a cesspool. That's why I'm here to tell you about Music of the Mat Remix. That's right, your favorite wrestling music podcast is back with a new format, where I bring on a guest and we play songs related to wrestling-themed topics. It could be a wrestling reference, a wrestling concept, a wrestling pun, things of that nature. Now you might be saying, Andrew, that is a very, very tenuous connection to pro wrestling on a wrestling podcast network. Is this just an excuse to hang out with your friends and talk about music and ignore the rest of the wrestling landscape? Yes. Yes, it is. So listen to Music of the Mat Remix on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, available on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast player of choice.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Music of the Mat Remix on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. I'm your host, Andrew Rich, and today I'm joined by a returning guest here on the show. He is a former contributor at Voices of Wrestling, but a current pal. It's Andy LaBarre. Hello again, Andy.
Hello, Andrew. Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to be back on your show, and congratulations on 8 years.
Oh, thank you.
Let's listen to that. It was 8 years, right? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That was fun and good to hear you and Chris together again. And yeah, congratulations. It makes me feel really old, though, that you've been doing this for 8 years.
Same. Yeah. Well, since you were last on the show here, Andy, I believe you bought a new house, so congrats on that.
Yeah. I think last time you had me on talking about some musical or wrestling memories. I was in my first purchased home, and we moved to a second just around the holidays here, about a month ago, and it's been a crazy month, but we're settled and it's a nice situation for us. So, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm currently sitting in my palatial studio apartment here in Boston. So, I don't have a mortgage, which is good. I also don't have rooms. Like, I have a room, right, and I have a bathroom, and that's about it. But I make it work, Andy. It's fine. So
I mean, home ownership is a double-edged sword. So it's a cool thing to do, and it's also the bane of every homeowner's existence. Basically, it feels like you're always trying to catch up. So it is what it is.
I can imagine. Well, today's episode, Andy, is called "Going for the Cover," and as you might guess, we are not playing songs about pinfalls. No, we are doing cover songs, a topic that I am very excited about. I love a good cover song, and there's no shortage either, that's for sure. You know, you look at the history of music in the mid-20th century, covers were like the lifeblood of the industry. It was such a common practice back then for record labels to just, churn out all of these remakes of songs to capitalize on them and have their own versions, and, you have a lot of early rock bands who would mostly do covers of blues songs or folk songs. And obviously there's, standards and things that... Oh, go ahead, Andy.
I say it's in the grand scheme of things, like writing and recording your own music or performing your own music is a relatively new thing, right? In music, it's usually those are two separate occupations. Even in the dawn of pop music, you had writers and then you had singers or performers in kind of all genres. And so covers are, like you said, like a foundational part of what we consider to be, kind of popular music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they've always been around, and I think they're always going to be around because, it's a great way for an artist or a band to pay tribute to someone that they admire, or, just put their own spin and interpretation on a song and just, give it new life, Andy, which is pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, still a lot of genres, things like country music or folk music, jazz. I mean, these are genres that still exist nowadays that still really kind of rely on covers or covering other people's versions or having someone write songs for you a lot of times. Because of that, I sort of veered away from those in a way because it was too hard to narrow down here my choices in those genres. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun, and it was fun to make this playlist. So I'm excited to talk about it, and excited to talk about what makes a good cover to me, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. And, in some cases, the cover becomes bigger than the original version. You think of like All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, yeah.
That's way more famous than the Bob Dylan version. Or Hurt by Johnny Cash, which, eclipsed the Nine Inch Nails version. And, Respect by Aretha Franklin, which is like your most famous song. That's originally done by Otis Redding. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the list goes on and on there. And it just goes to show that a great song can be a great song, whether you wrote it or not. It all depends on how it comes together and the talent of the artist, of course, Andy. So there you go.
Absolutely.
But all right, let's get to our picks here. I have 10 picks. You have 12, Andy, but with a caveat that we'll get to, of course. And there's a play-out song at the end as well. And I got to say, this was really tough to narrow down my picks here. There are so many great covers out there to choose from. This was tough there. But Andy, you are the guest. You'll go first. What's your first pick?
So my first pick is a song that's originally written and performed by great 60s songwriter and folk singer Tim Hardin. He wrote a song called Reason to Believe, and this has been covered by tons and tons of people. I actually once made a playlist of like 25 good covers of that for a friend who kind of discovered that song and really loved it. But one of my favorites was probably the first version I ever heard from one of my favorite rock albums of the 70s. And it's by a guy who is known for doing covers. He also happens to have maybe my favorite voice like in rock history. A lot of his music, most of his music is very corny, but his early career in his band Faces, and then his early solo career, Rod Stewart, his version of Reason to Believe by Tim Hardin is really one of my favorite album closers and favorite rock and roll covers ever.
Knowing that you lied straight-faced while I cried, still I look to find a reason to believe. It's all true. Knowing that you lied straight-faced while I cried, still I look to find a reason to believe.
Yeah, that was Reason to Believe. It's from Every Picture Tells a Story from 1971. It's this album of mixture of covers, mostly covers, but it's the album that Rod Stewart has Maggie May on, and it's just a great album, and that's the album closer. And I don't know, it's softer than some of the album, but it's just something that's really stuck with me since the first time I heard it as a kid. And like I said, it's one of my favorite albums, and Rod Stewart's been. People think of him as like, If You Think I'm Sexy, or all these
Hot Legs,
corny, yeah, exactly, kind of corny songs, and he's kind of a corny guy. I mean, he's still going, but his early stuff, I mean, he's really just this great interpreter of song, and his voice. I mean, he idolized Sam Cooke, and his voice, especially in the 70s and in the 60s, really sounds like a white British Sam Cooke in a way, a rock and roll version, and. I don't know. I just love it, and it was almost the first song I chose for this, so had to do it. I did kind of experiment with other covers of that song because there's so many good ones, but stuck with my guns and stuck with my gut, and the Rod Stewart version. I just wanted to open up with that, and yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good song, and the whole album is fantastic too. And it is, I think, kind of a microcosm of Rod's output, because, as you said, he's a guy who has a lot of original songs like Maggie May and Mandolin Wind and songs like that, but he has done a bunch of covers too, like this and That's All Right, I Know I'm Losing You, and he's great at both of them for sure. I mean, that's the benefit of that voice of his. It works no matter what he does. But yeah, the first cut is the deepest. Is another really good cover that he does. Street Fighting Man as well. Whole bunch of them out there for Rod Stewart there. So yeah, good first pick to start us off here, Andy. But my first pick here is a doozy, because in 1995, Pulp put out the song "Common People," their most iconic song, I think, and it's a great song. But wouldn't it be even better if it was sung by Captain James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise with a little help from Joe Jackson and Ben Folds? I think it would. So let's hear off of the album Has Been, William Shatner doing a version of Common People.
I took her to a supermarket. I don't know why, but I had to start it somewhere. So it started there. I said, pretend you've got no money. She just laughed and said, oh, you're so funny. I said, yeah? Well, I can't see anyone else smiling in here. Are you sure? You want to live like common people? You want to see whatever common people see? You want to sleep with common people? You want to sleep with common people like me? But she didn't understand.
She just smiled and held my hand. Went to Plaza Barber Shop, cut your hair and get a job, smoke some fags and play some pool, pretend you never went to school, but still you'll never get it right when you're lying in bed at night, watching roaches climb the wall. If you called your dad, he could stop it all here.
You'll never live like common people. You'll never do whatever common people do. You'll never fail like...
So yeah, it's easy to like this one ironically, but not me. I unironically love this song a lot, more than the original, actually. I think it's so wonderful how much they put into this. Shatner, Joe Jackson, Ben Folds, a choir, the full production. It all just builds and builds into this glorious thing. And, Shatner, not the best singer. He is basically doing his talk singing that he does in the famous, Rocket Man performance or whatever, but he's been an amazing entertainer for decades upon decades, and this is no different. I wholeheartedly love this song, Andy.
Yeah, actually, it's funny when we kind of chose this as the topic. I think there was two songs just in talking with you over these past 8, 9, maybe 10 years that we've kind of known each other about music here and there. There was kind of two songs I was like, I know Andrew's going to pick these two songs, and you did pick both of them, and this was one of them. I know that you love this song. It is a wonderful interpretation of this song. Definitely, I do not prefer this to the Pulp version. The Pulp version is one of my favorite. I mean, all encompassing one of my favorite songs ever. I think it's like one of the best singles of the '90s. One of my go-to karaoke songs. So it's an absolute classic to me, but I don't really like this William Shatner album. I think it goes a little too off the rails for me, but this is like, this is peak perfect Shatner, perfect Ben Folds. Like it is, a lot of fun, and it's a silly song, so it totally works for who he is and what he's doing with it.
Yeah, fun is the right word, because it's fun to have songs being done by people you wouldn't expect. And I think when this song came out in '95. I don't think anyone would have expected Bill Shatner, Joe Jackson, and Ben Folds to get together and do a version of it. But here we are, Andy. Here we are. Yep. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun. Yeah. But all right. What's your next pick there, Andy?
Well, my next pick is a medley of sorts. I believe that's what we have queued up next. Mm-hmm. In the news right now, not that he's never not really been famous. There's a certain movie out. Are recently out about Bob Dylan, and as one of the premier songwriters ever and musicians ever. Obviously, there's thousands and thousands of covers of his songs from some random person in their living room to like we said, all along the Watchtower, these huge hits and things like that. To things like Wagon Wheel. Both versions of that are based off kind of a sketch of his, a song that he wrote or a chorus that he wrote, and I knew exactly 3 covers that I wanted to include of Dylan, and I asked you, hey, can we do like a little medley here, because I can't choose between these 3 songs. They're 3 of my favorite covers ever and 3 of my favorite Dylan covers ever, and they do just enough with the original source material that makes them just wonderful, and something all 3 are super, super important to me. The first one is Boots of Spanish Leather by Nancy Griffith, just a great classic country rendition of it. Second one is perhaps even my favorite cover of all time, and it's a relatively new cover, but I just love the interpretation. It's Dolly Parton doing Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. And then finally, from the movie I'm Not There, it's Jim James of My Morning Jacket doing Going to Acapulco, which is from the sessions with the band.
There's nothing you can send me, my own true love. There is nothing I'm wishing to be owning. Just carry yourself back to me unspoiled. From across that lonesome ocean. There ain't no use in turning on your light, babe. That light I never know. Ain't no use in turning on your light, babe. I'm on the dark side of the road. Still I wish there was something you would do or say to try and make me want to change my mind and stay. We never did do much talking anyway. Don't think twice, it's alright.
And I'm just the same as anyone else when it comes to scratching for my knees. Going to Acapulco, going on the run, going down to see that love, gonna have some fun.
Wow, yeah. So that was Boots of Spanish Leather by Nancy Griffith, Don't Think Twice by Dolly Parton, and Going to Acapulco by Jim James of My Morning Jacket. I think Calexico, great Tex-Mex band, backs him up on that, who's kind of all over that soundtrack. And yeah, 3 of my absolute favorite Dylan covers of all time, and again, someone who has probably thousands of covers, famous covers almost, of his music. It was really hard to narrow down, but just 3 songs I adore, and quite different from one another. I mean, Dolly, who's also covered hundreds of songs in her career. She has had that rock and roll cover album last year or the year before that was pretty funny. But she, her turning Don't Think Twice, which is this amazingly powerful kind of breakup song, into this jubilant bluegrass song in the way that only she can do is something that is really, I don't know, it kind of blew me away when that album came out of bluegrass covers that she put out. And yeah, I think that was when we used to be in a music league, like where we choose things. I think that was my choice for the cover round, just because it's really probably my favorite cover ever at this point. And I don't know why, it just really connects with me. So yeah, I had to get some Bob Dylan on there. Haven't seen Complete Unknown yet, but yeah, just had to get him on there. And I'm Not There. If you've not seen that movie, that soundtrack is amazing, and it's just a really cool interpretation of what a music biography can be.
Yeah, I believe the 2 most covered pop artists ever are the Beatles and Bob Dylan. And with Dylan, a big part of that is he's written so many songs to choose from and cover. There's there's plenty of material there for sure. But I like all 3 of your picks, definitely. Nancy Griffith, I had never heard of her before, but that version was really good. Dolly Parton, love her, and I'll play more of her real soon. And the one I gravitate towards the most, I think, though, is Going to Acapulco, because I took a Bob Dylan course in college, and we watched I'm Not There. Oh, perfect. And Jim James and Calexico are in the movie, and Jim James is wearing like the white face makeup that Dylan had in the Rolling Thunder Review. So yeah,
it's like a haunting, kind of like tent revival scene, and I think it's Richard Gere at that point is Bob Dylan, and it's like a haunting, but like delightful scene. It's always stuck with me since that movie came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but these are all really good choices for sure.
Yeah, Nancy Griffith, she died in 2021, which really hit me hard. Lots of musician deaths at this point because, we're in the 2020s, and these are people who, kind of started making their name 40, 50 years ago. And just one of my favorite country singers ever, and kind of straddles that line between country and folk, and has a higher register in her voice, really traditional in a lot of places. But just again, like the theme of this, just really great interpreter of song. And that was one of my favorite covers that she does. So there you go.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I'll keep the Dolly Parton train a-rolling here with my own pick of hers. She put out an album back in 2001 called Little Sparrow, and on it she does a version of the song Shine by Collective Soul. So let's hear Dolly Parton sing Shine.
Love is in the water, love is in the air. Show me where to go and tell me will love be there. Teach me how to speak, teach me how to share. Teach me where to go and tell me will love be there. Will love be there? Yeah. Oh, heaven, let your light shine down. Oh, heaven, let your light shine down. Oh, heaven, let your light shine down. Oh, heaven, let your light shine.
Yeah, that's just gorgeous stuff right there. My God, I first heard that in the season 3 finale of The Righteous Gemstones, of all places,
right?
Which is also a great show. Now that could have been a Dolly original, I think, because the Collective Soul version, that's all grungy and hard rock, and take that out and replace it with the country bluegrass sound by this group Nickel Creek. It sounds like a Dolly Parton song. Heaven, let your light shine down. That sounds like a Dolly Parton lyric. It feels like the perfect fit and the perfect cover for her to do. Andy, it's just, I love it so much.
Yeah, this is from Little Sparrow, which came out in 2000 or 2001. That's my first Dolly Parton album. I wasn't really a country fan in the 90s or in my younger years, but kind of around, sometime around high school, I started being, there is like good country and good bluegrass out there. And this was my first Dolly album. And I've loved this album for, almost 24 years now, and iconic covers. I think she won a Grammy for this song. And just Dolly doing bluegrass is just one of my favorite things, and Nickel Creek's one of my favorite bands, so they're all over the record, and a great version here. Excellent pick.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that Dolly's done a lot of covers in her career. She's had a lot of her songs covered as well by other people. Oh, yeah. I think most famously, "I Will Always Love You" by Whitney Houston. Yep. That's Dolly's song originally. So she's a really good coverer, but she's also a very prolific coveree as well, Andy. So there you go. But all right, Andy, what's your next pick?
Next for me is this was one of the latter additions that I had on this, which is actually funny because it's one of these things that I point to as taking a cover and really making your own. I think sometimes people talk about cover songs, and I think we've had this conversation before, maybe not you and I, but our group of people who talk music online, some people don't like covers because if they sound too similar to the original. A good cover is something where you have to make it your own. And I don't necessarily agree, again, talking about jazz, folk, country, things like that. Like, you don't have to necessarily make it your own. I don't know what makes a good cover. It's just something that connects with you. But this version of one of my favorite kind of 60s pop songs ever, done in this crazy psychedelic funk way, is amazing. And there's a rash of covers like this that have kind of come to light in the last 15, 20 years. But this is Eddie Hazel covering the Mamas and Papas classic, California Dreamin'. Yeah, that song rips. I've never heard that song and been like, "Oh, maybe this isn't very good." Like that's one of those songs for me that I mean, even the originals like that, where I'm like, every time I hear California Dreamin', whether it's Moms and Papas or this version by Eddie Hazel, I'm just like, that's one of the great songs of all time. And Eddie's guitar through this, yeah, it just rips. Awesome soloing, awesome version. If you don't know, Eddie Hazel's one of the guitarists for P-Funk, Parliament Funkadelic, and so you know he's got the skills. You know he's going to bring that P-Funk energy to it. And this is from his album Games, Names, and Guitar Things, which is a great title. And just an awesome album. I mean, almost a 5-star record for me. It also has a fantastic cover that I almost chose of I Want You, She's So Heavy by the Beatles. So we could have the Beatles on here, on my list at least. And yeah, just an awesome cover. Had you heard this before?
I knew who Eddie Hazel was because I know him as one of the 40 people in Parliament Funkadelic, and he does do that just insane guitar solo on Maggot Brain,
right,
which is just legendary.
One of the best guitar solos ever.
Yeah, but I learned a lot more about him with this stuff here because this is his only solo album that came out when he was still alive, which is interesting. And he turns this classic folk pop song into this soulful, funky, noodling guitar fest. And it does remind me of Hendrix doing Watchtower.
Sure.
And turning folk into hard rock. But it's like the next phase of that, like the next step up from that, the 70s version of that sort of thing. So, really good song, really interesting, and certainly different version than the original version of the song. But still really good, Andy.
Yeah. I had another song on my list originally that was a cover. It's a Boz Scaggs cover of Somebody Loan Me a Dime, which is not an old blues song, a blues song. I think it's a 60s blues song by Fenton Robinson. And that has Duane Allman playing guitar. And it's maybe my favorite guitar performance ever, like in a single song. Duane Allman's probably my favorite guitarist. But that song is not very famous. I was like, it's one of those things that was like, that's a cover, but like, the Boz Scaggs version, if anyone knows it, would be the famous version. Whereas this one, I was like, I needed a really awesome guitar solo of a song people knew, and I just love this version. So, that song got me hyped. I'm going to have to listen to this album after this recording.
Okay. Well, my next pick here is a supergroup. This is a band called The Power Station, and it's made up of John and Andy Taylor of Duran Duran, Tony Thompson and Bernard Edwards of Chic, and on lead vocals, a guy named Robert Palmer. And they only had 2 albums. This song is from their self-titled debut from '85. And this is their cover of the classic T-Rex song, Get It On, Bang a Gong.
Like a con, you get a hubcap, Gangnam Style halo. You look like a trucker. You're the only thing you think the truth with your cloak full of egos. You dirty symphony, my girl. Get it on, bang a gong, get it on. Get it on, bang a gong, get it on.
So yeah, the original, of course, is a glam rock staple. This one, it brings a harder edge to it, and Robert Palmer, of course, a little bit more soul in there, a little bit more suaveness with the vocals, I suppose. But yeah, really good cover here. The interesting thing about it is it's basically the song that formed the band, because originally it was supposed to be a bunch of guest singers on each song, and Robert Palmer comes in, he does a different song. He sees that they're going to do this one. They do it just to do it. And they realized, let's just have this be the band instead of the guest singers part. And this was the second single. The first one was called Some Like It Hot, which is also a really good song. And that was also a bigger hit than this one. But this is also a top 10 hit in the U.S. too. So, I dig this one a lot, Andy.
Yeah. Again, another one where the original was one of my favorites, and this is also really good. I mean, that T-Rex album, Electric Warriors, one of my favorite albums of the 70s as well. And Robert Palmer, it's cool you picked him. I think you're a fan. Maybe I've seen you talk about him before, and he's one of these people who I only know kind of from the MTV videos, and I've never really explored deeper, even though he was a megastar for a short period of time. And he's actually someone who I'm going to be exploring pretty deep here soon. I like to do these projects where I really kind of delve into the artists, and he's on the list, so I'm excited to get more because this is a great cover. And I've heard this version before, but I had no idea who it was and who was performing it. I've just kind of heard it, and now I know. So thanks for including it. It makes me excited to explore more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the funny thing is, when they toured the album, Robert Palmer backed out because he's got a solo career, and
Right.
and they got Michael DeBar to come in and sing instead, including at Live Aid of all places, which is pretty crazy. And he's a great singer too, and
That might be okay.
Yeah, and then the reunion album came 10 years later, but John Taylor left and Bernard Edwards died, so they were never able to really all come together live, for this band. But it is what it is, But all right, Andy, what's your next pick?
All right, my next pick is going to start off on a little bit of a journey, for me at least, into some R&B and some soul music here. That's really where a lot of my heart lies. Growing up, I listened to a lot of 90s R&B as it was happening in time and into the 2000s, and I still listen to a lot of that to this day, even stuff that isn't super good or maybe doesn't always hold up. It just has this really nostalgic edge to it. Something that is really good and does hold up, and an artist that has been around for 30 years and has only put out, I think, 5 albums and an MTV Unplugged, is Maxwell. All of his albums are good, if not great. He's kind of this forgotten legend, at least in my mind, maybe overshined by some of his peers. But on his third album now, he has a cover of Kate Bush's This Woman's Work, which he had performed on his MTV Unplugged years prior. That was an electrifying performance, but I chose the album version here, and his covering Kate Bush is hard. There's some great Kate Bush covers, and this is one of, if not my favorite ones, and an iconic take on this great song.
Now starts the craft of the flower. I know you've got a little life in you left. I know you've got a lot of strength left. I know you've got a little life in you left. I know you've got a lot of strength left. I shouldn't be crying, but I just can't let it show. I should be hoping, but I can't stop thinking. All the things we should have said that I never said. All the things we should have done that we never did. All the things we should have given, but I didn't. Oh, darling, make it go. Make it go away.
Getting romantic. That is, just a beautiful song. A lot of my picks, I'm realizing kind of as I'm looking at the list, and maybe I did this consciously. A lot of my favorite covers do have a very important connection beyond just being really good interpretations of song, maybe a memory from a time in life, or just elicit some kind of emotional reaction, which all good music does. But I'm looking at this song and a couple of the next picks, and they have that same feeling. I imagine you don't play that much kind of slower, high registered 2000s R&B on this podcast, but this is it's just a great version of a song. Maxwell's one of my favorite musicians of the 2000s, and still today would like for him to put out more music. But this is one of those songs that I knew this song well before I knew who Kate Bush was. I'd seen Kate Bush videos on VH1 as a kid, but I didn't know anything about her music, But I saw this MTV Unplugged, and I thought this was a Maxwell song in the 90s and the early 2000s until I discovered the original. So yeah, just a great song. Great version, and I don't know how he gets his voice that high, but I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I never heard of Maxwell before,
Oh,
but
really?
he has quite the falsetto on him. I'll give him that much.
Yeah.
He's very impressive there. Yeah. But yeah, I knew the Kate Bush version of this song, and she wrote it for this movie called She's Having a Baby, and it plays during a scene where there's a problem during childbirth. This woman's work is another way of saying childbirth there, and it's written from the perspective of the guy hoping that everything's going to be okay, and asking for his partner to pull through. So it's one of those songs that it might seem like a quote unquote woman's song, but it's actually not because of the narrator. So it works for a male artist just as it does for Kate Bush. So it's one of those songs that can actually cross genders, so to speak, and still work, Andy.
Yeah, actually, and I think, gosh, I have a memory. I'd have to look this up. I did do it beforehand, but yeah, that's cool that you mentioned that, because I remember in the early 2000s, VH1, they used to do these concert events where they'd get like a bunch of artists together, and they did a few where it was all like woman performers. So I don't remember what they were called. I don't want to say like icons or something like that, but I know one was like around like Aretha Franklin, but then you would have
was it Divas?
Maybe Divas, yeah.
Yeah,
and
I think it was Divas from VH1.
On one of them,
yeah.
Yeah, and I think on one of them they had Maxwell perform this song like as obviously a man and a male, and so it is accepted, and just a fantastic version. Kate Bush version is great too. I almost chose the Future Heads song of not running uphill. What do they do? Gosh, now I'm blanking. Doesn't matter.
Hounds of Love, I think. Yeah.
Hounds of Love. That's right. Yes. Yeah. Hounds of Love. That's a classic of kind of my high school years. I just covered that on my blog earlier at the end of last year. That album. That's a really fun interpretation of another famous Kate Bush song. But this one, has a much more important meaning to my life, I suppose. And I actually recently almost bought a bunch of Maxwell CDs, but I talked myself out of it as someone who just moved about 700 records. I don't need to add CDs to the pile, so I'm glad I didn't. But yeah, thanks for playing it.
Yeah, I actually thought about picking the Running Up That Hill cover by Placebo.
Yes,
because I love that version too. But you got us covered with Kate Bush there, Andy, folks. All right, but. All right, my next pick here. This is a singer-songwriter from Sweden, and he's also of Argentinian descent, a guy named Jose Gonzalez. And he put out an album in 2007 called In Our Nature, and on it he does a cover of a song by Massive Attack. So let's hear Jose Gonzalez with his version of Teardrop. So I love the original version of that song, and I've heard the original version of that song a million times because it was the theme song for the show House. And I watched every episode of House when it was on. But I love this one too. It's an indie folk take on a trip-hop song, which is such a strong departure of genre, but it still creates like this dramatic mood with the dynamic of the hard acoustic guitar playing and the more gentle ethereal vocals there. And this was also used in House too in one episode, so there was double teardrops there. But But yeah, I really enjoyed this cover. I haven't heard a lot of Jose Gonzalez's solo work, but
Have you heard his most famous cover?
I don't think so. Remind me.
Heartbeats that's originally a song by The Knife, who was another kind of 2000s. I think that album that song's from is from the 90s, but they're like a Swedish kind of dance band, made kind of trip hop too. And he did a cover of Heartbeats, one of their songs, that became like a radio staple in like 2003, 4, 5 kind of time. You've maybe heard it before and maybe didn't even know it was a cover because it's not a super famous song, but it's another like awesome folky, even slower take on a kind of a trip hoppy kind of electro song. Really, really cool cover.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's done a lot of work with this down tempo band called 07. Who I like a lot. So I've heard a bunch of his stuff with them, just not his solo stuff in a lot of cases. But
07 is the first place I ever heard. Is it Sia?
Sia, yep. Sia's been on their albums a lot.
Like back in the early 2000s, yeah.
Yeah, 07, I really dig them a lot. Good music to read to, I think, for sure. But yeah, Teardrop was a big song for Massive Attack, and I really enjoyed what Jose did with it, Andy, for sure.
Yeah, I love Massive Attack. I mean, I love that era of trip hop and just all the electronic music not all of it, but a lot of that electronic music that was coming out of the UK. And I still to this day listen to Massive Attack a lot. Blue Lines, very important to me. I mean, I consider those albums were so big, even though they don't sound anything like it. I mean, they're really part of the Britpop movement, right? They were these very different takes on electronic music, brand new, Portishead and Massive Attack and some of these groups like that. But you would never guess that would become like super popular, but it did, and it was kind of folded into, Oasis and Blur and Pulp and all these other bands that were experimenting at the time, and just awesome stuff. And Massive Attack is just great, and Tricky, and all these people. So really cool cover, and I actually forgot that cover existed. So again, you're giving me stuff to re-evaluate and check out, which is I guess a good part of this podcast. So
that's
the
point. Yeah, that's part of the deal here for sure. But all right, Andy, what's your next pick?
My next one is, I think it's my only live version on here. I wanted to have another kind of similar to Maxwell vibe, in a song that was a classic song, slightly reinterpreted and from one of my favorite musicians, but on his live album. It's D'Angelo covering Smokey Robinson's Cruisin', is the way that only D'Angelo can do.
Everything's fine. You I wish my sweet closer, closer, heart of future. Ooh, baby, ooh, let the music take your mind. Just releasing you, baby. Gonna fly away. Magic on my way. I love it when we're cruising together. Music was made for love. Cruising is made for love. I love it when we're cruising together.
That was D'Angelo's cover of Smokey Robinson's Cruisin', a famous song. Smokey is another artist who's been covered hundreds and hundreds of times. Great songwriter, great singer, great interpreter of song, and someone whose music is kind of endlessly covered. And I don't know if this is my favorite Smokey cover ever. I mean, the Nations have an entire album that's classic Smokey Robinson covers, but this to me, for it being a famous song by a very famous singer, is the definitive version of this song. Even if it's a live version, whatever, when I think about Cruisin', I think about D'Angelo's delivery of it. And it's not that much different from Smokey Robinson's version, but it's just so sounds like you're in this cafe in London and people are just smoking, and there's, puffs, clouds of smoke of whatever kind of substance, and, really nice drinks and highball glasses and martinis. And it just, for it to be in the 90s, but it feels like you're in the 60s. It's just it's awesome. And D'Angelo, similar to Maxwell, but even more elusive, just someone who's only put out incredible music and has had his demons. I mean, 3 classic albums and a classic live album, and really one of the best musicians we've kind of ever had in my lifetime, that I wish we had more of, but I just treasure the stuff that we do have.
Yeah, you're on a soulful tear here, Andy. My God, 3 songs in a row here. My God, but this is definitely the sexiest of the 3 you've played, because California Dreamin' is a guitar showcase. This Woman's Work, depressing. But this is D'Angelo doing a suave cover of Smokey Robinson. My God, I can only imagine the amount of children that were conceived to this song, you know, but yeah, this is damn nice. This is damn nice. And, you know, I had heard of D'Angelo, but I don't know too much of his work. I was a bit surprised to find out that, yeah, he's only got 3 studio albums.
Yeah.
He's done a lot of producing, a lot of songwriting and collaborations, but only 3 albums himself. First one in 95, second one in 2000, and the most recent one in 2014. And they're all they're all 5 out of 5 stars, critical acclaim across the board. So he's kind of like the soul version of Fiona Apple, you know, where it's like quality over quantity.
Very similar. Very similar. Yeah. Yeah, very similar. And actually, as we record this here at the end of January 2025, we are only a few days removed from the 25th anniversary of probably his most famous or most acclaimed album, Voodoo, that came out in January, I think, 25th, 2000. Yeah, like you said, a 5 out of 5 star album, an album that put someone like Jay Dill, a hip hop producer extraordinaire, on the map. I don't know, D'Angelo is just so special. Black Messiah, that came out in 2014, really, it's a political album without always being overtly political. It's just perfect. I don't know. It was one of those albums that came out and it was so perfect. There's podcasts and books and articles written about how important that album was, even though it didn't necessarily break through in the mainstream. It's just, yeah, he's amazing. I love all of his albums a lot, and I listen to them all a lot. I just wish he had, triple the amount.
Well, I'm going to play my own soul song here. This is a guy named Charles Bradley. And he spent a lot of years as a James Brown impersonator, and it was only towards the end of his life that he put out his own albums and got some recognition. And in 2016, the year before he died, he put out an album called Changes, and the title track is a cover of the Black Sabbath song. So let's hear Charles Bradley doing Changes.
We shed the year. We shed each day, and love together. We found a way, but soon the world had its evil way. My heart was blinded. Love went astray. I'm going through changes. I'm going through changes. Oh, in my life.
So I remember when I first heard this song, I was in a Barnes & Noble, just looking through some books, and then this came on the store radio, and it stopped me right in my tracks.
Yeah.
For a few different reasons. Number one, it's, a soul version of a Black Sabbath song. That's pretty crazy right there. The backing band is the Budos Band, who are a very prominent soul band. But also just how incredible and incredibly powerful Charles Bradley's voice is. Like, it's so amazing. And the original version of this song, it was already a departure in and of itself, because it's on Black Sabbath Volume 4, which is right in the heart of the classic Ozzy era of the band. but it's a ballad. It's a Mellotron ballad, not some dark doom metal rocker. And this song just takes that and puts it to a whole nother level. It's amazing. And I remember I had to Shazam this on my phone immediately just to find out who this was. And yeah, this introduced me to Charles Bradley, and I'm glad it did because he's awesome, and it's a real shame that he died just as he was, kind of getting some prominence there, but at least he did get some prominence. This song was in a few shows and whatnot, and a few other songs of his have been around, but yeah, this song in particular, this is one of my favorite covers of all time. I love it so much, Andy.
Yeah. I think it's the theme song for Big Mouth.
Yes.
The cartoon on Netflix there, which started off very funny and problematic, and now it's not very funny and still problematic. So it's okay. It's a really good theme song there. Charles Bradley, awesome guy. I was really big in kind of the 2000s and kind of late 2000s and then early 2010s into kind of the Daptone label and the Budos Band, Sharon Jones, the Dap Kings, all these people, the Mahana Street Band, and Charles Bradley's in that kind of record label. And I was able to see him live, and it was awesome. I mean, older guy, but yeah, James Brown-esque. I've seen James Brown live as well, but towards literally in like one of the last years of his life. And so this was, great choice. This was the other one that I thought maybe you would choose because I know you're a Sabbath person. And I know this is a famous, not famous, maybe not the right word, but like an iconic cover. This is, one of those things that's just eclipsing, an already epic source material. It's such a definitive cover, I think, and great version. His first two albums I really loved, No Time for Dreaming and Victim of Love. I never really got that into the Changes album. Maybe I just haven't listened to as much, but this cover is hard to pass up.
Yeah, if you look up like live performances of him doing this song, like he is putting every fiber of his being into this thing. Like he is sweating, his face is all crunched up. Because thematically, it's a very heavy song about loss. And, he puts so much emotional weight into it. More so than Ozzy. And Ozzy does a great version of this too, don't get me wrong. But, man, Charles Bradley you can feel the soul, I guess, Sandy, in this song for sure,
Yeah. Volume 4 might be my favorite Sabbath album. I know you and Chris just talked about later period Sabbath, and I think Chris said on your last episode that later period that might be some of his favorite Sabbath stuff. When he said some people might disagree with this, and I think I raised my hand when I was listening to it. But I do love Volume 4, and I love the original. But yeah, like I said, this is just a great cover, so emotional, and a perfect pick there.
All right, what you got next for us, Sandy?
My next one, a cover of kind of a soul song. It's a cover of a Delphonics song, La La Means I Love You, which is a really iconic song, one of my favorite kind of smooth, super high registered old soul songs. And I was originally going to choose this medley that Todd Rundgren does on his album A Wizard of True Star. It's like this 11-minute medley of a bunch of Motown and other soul songs. But I was like, let's just talk about that record, A Wizard of True Star. Everyone should hear that. It's a real mind messes with your mind type of pop album. One of my favorite pop albums ever, but there's nothing like it. And I chose this reggae cover of it because I wanted to have a reggae cover at least. So this is Alton Ellis, reggae musician, covering the Delphonics, La La Means I Love You.
Come to you with the line wasn't true, and you pass them by, You even see the rain, and the don't mean a thing. Why don't you let me try?
right. So that was Alton Ellis covering the Delphonics' La La Means I Love You. Little reggae cover there. Don't know a ton about Alton Ellis. I do listen to like a lot of reggae, and especially roots reggae. Something I've kind of fallen out of in recent years, but definitely at a younger age, it was a genre that I explored pretty deeply. And I mostly just know him from various kind of soul cover versions. So I don't know if that's necessarily his MO or what, not what he's most famous for. But I wanted this song in particular, and I knew this cover, and there was a couple of different versions. Like I said, the Todd Rundgren version was originally what I was going to go for. But I just wanted to choose this and break up the little bit of a sad soul a little bit with a happier version of kind of like a sadder soul song.
Yeah, I also don't really know much about this guy. I looked him up, and he's got the nickname The Godfather of Rocksteady. And Rocksteady's like a reggae subgenre. The only Rocksteady that I know are the Aretha Franklin song, the No Doubt album, and the video game company that made the Batman Arkham games. That's kind of it, I guess, Andy. But
so Rocksteady, as I understand it, and again, I'm not an expert, is basically kind of pre Bob Marley roots reggae, and it kind of comes out of ska. So you still have a little bit of that ska beat, I guess, but it's slower. So it is kind of like almost like ska versions of American soul songs. Not all covers, but it's kind of like that blending of like smooth soul from America with kind of the more, and not third wave, Real Big Fish type ska, but original reggae ska, which has a little bit of a different, beat than what came in the 70s and later.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like a bunch of his songs have been sampled in hip hop and reggae over the years. So yeah, good for him. And this is a good little song, I guess. That's all I got about this one, Andy. I'm sorry, but that's kind of it. But all right, my next pick here. This is a double famous cover, a song called "Nothing Compares to You," and originally it was written by Prince for his band The Family, and then it was very famously covered by Sinead O'Connor, and then in 2015. Chris Cornell did another famous version of it on SiriusXM live, and it was officially released a few years later. So let's hear Chris Cornell doing his version of "Nothing Compares to You."
Nothing can stop these lonely tears from falling. Tell me, where did I go wrong? I could put my arms around any girl I choose, but it just reminds me of you. I went to the doctor and guess what he told me? He said, boy, you better try to have fun no matter what you do. But he's a fool, 'cause nothing compares to you. Keaton Simons.
So yeah, everyone knows the Sinead version, and I love the Sinead version too. That's amazing. I have to say though, I think I like this one more. Chris Cornell's voice is just so transfixing. The stripped down arrangement with the acoustic guitar and the cello, just so powerful. Similar to Changes, it's a song about losing someone. It's about a breakup. And I think what makes it even heavier nowadays is that, Chris Cornell died a few years after this came out. And, Sinead O'Connor is also dead, and Prince is dead too, so it's just a chain link of sadness going on here, unfortunately. But regardless, it's still a tremendous song. Weird spelling in the title aside, it's a tremendous song no matter who sings it, I think, Andy,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Sinead version, to me, is... I mean, if you took... made me list my 10 favorite singles of the 90s, the biggest songs of the 90s, that would be on it. As overplayed as it is, I think every now and then, like, and it's not every now and then, it's like pretty frequently, I get obsessed with Nothing Compares to You. I've heard it thousands of times, and I think it really is just such a powerful song. And Sinead passing away really affected me in a pretty profound way. I don't love all of her music, although I think her career is better than kind of what she was handed, and what happened to her, whether she sabotaged herself or not. She has some great music, and that's that version of the song. And this version, I remember when this was recorded for Sirius XM, and then when it came out on that kind of collection in 2020 or 2021, which I really didn't like beyond this cover. Chris Cornell is absolutely one of my favorite vocalists ever. Both his solo stuff, Audio Slave, and of course Soundgarden. But this is an excellent version, and it really captures that he connects with the song and connects with, I think, Sinead's interpretation of it. And his voice is just, amazing. So it's great. Sorry, I kind of went on a tangent there, but it's such a powerful song. It's one of those songs that really always stops me in my tracks. I can't just kind of like have fun with it. So, it's funny. Prince has the worst version of the song. So, what you can't say about many songs, because Prince, I think, is maybe one of the most, if not the most talented musician ever. Yeah, he has the worst version of this very iconic song. But awesome inclusion. I'm glad that you chose the Cornell version, and thank you for letting me talk about Sinead.
Well, I was also thinking about picking Cornell's version of Billie Jean.
Yeah.
Which is also very stripped down from the original too. So that's the thing about these covers. Like I said, doing the different arrangements is fun and all that, but it's all about the talent really at the end of the day. If you can get the talent and the voice down, that's the key thing, I think. And Chris Cornell was not short on talent, that's for sure. I mean, he was so talented. Really, I think the best singer of his generation in that 90s grunge era, Andy,
Yeah, and the most dynamic. He could really go a lot of different directions, and he showed that, and I think he could go even further. He's someone I've loved since I was a kid. My family likes Soundgarden. I think Soundgarden was... I grew up in the Pacific Northwest during grunge. I was very young, kind of as it broke, but I was here, and I remember Nirvana being on TV and stuff like that, and I remember seeing Soundgarden even before Black Hole Sun on TV, and hearing them on the radio, local radio, and they're just a very powerful band, and Chris is someone that I connect with really deeply, and I think is something that's really cool with Gen Z and Gen Alpha is kind of reclaiming grunge again. We're 30 years out, and grunge is becoming pretty big. It's the same way that shoegaze has recently, and some other kind of genres of the 90s and 80s, and there's kind of been this resurgence of people. I don't know if discovering Soundgarden's right, but reevaluating, and I think they're already a very praised band, especially a couple of their albums there, but. It's just fun to see people excited about someone who, I'm now almost 40, and it's cool to see young people excited about a musician I've loved for, almost 40 years.
Mm-hmm. All right, Andy, what is your next pick?
Next one was my last inclusion, and actually, my wife kind of helped me pick. I was like, "Did you choose this one?" Because it's one of my favorite songs ever. Almost to a point where it's a joke, where I have to put on road trip playlist, or when we're just dancing around the house with my son and her. It's a song and a version that I play a lot. I love early '90s kind of Atlanta bass. The most famous song is probably the Ghost Town DJ's song, but I Know Jay, which is Joni backwards. She had a couple of hits, and I don't remember what year these came out, but she had Time After Time, a Cyndi Lauper cover done in this kind of fun R&B dance version, produced by Jermaine Dupri. And then she had Love You Down, which is a Ready for the World cover, which is a very slow, dramatic 80s R&B song. And her version is anything but that. It's super fun, super fast-paced, and just a great song from the 90s.
Remember when you drove home from work? I love the way when you kiss me goodbye. All of your friends, I'm just too young for you. But you tell them that I can do
So let's look that up. So that was Ino Jay with "Love You Down" cover of "Ready for the World" song, and that came out originally as a single in 1997, but came out on an album in 1999. I think it was maybe even a bonus track. Just a super fun song, really nostalgic for me. That kind of Atlanta bass sound with those really rapid fire percussive beats, and kind of fun keys. She still sings it slow, but it's a dance song still at the same time. And in the video, people dancing and stepping and doing all kinds of cool stuff. But just a iconic song to me, and I've said that a lot. I feel like I'm in WWE a few years ago with the Iconics there, but it's just a great one I had to add. And I removed one of the best covers ever of a great song to put this on, because I just had to have it on. And there you go.
Yeah, I had to look up how to say this person's name, because I was like, Inoj, I-N-O-J.
Yeah.
It was like Brian Alvarez, E-I-T-A. But it's Inoj. And again, I never heard of her, unfortunately. But it's a good pop song for sure. Good pop R&B song. I was surprised to find out this is her only album, because I think the story goes she was in a girl group that broke up, and she became like a songwriter mainly. And then the record label asked her to sing like a reference track for someone else, and she recorded this song, and the label was like, let's just put this out. And it was on the charts for like 20 weeks. And this was the only album that she did. Yeah. And again, it's a bit surprising because she has a really good voice, but that was just it, Andy.
Yep. Yeah. So it's part of So Def, which again, Jermaine Dupri's label, and they put out in the late or mid '90s these two compilations called like So Def Bass All Stars, and they basically are just these compilations of songs kind of similar vein. There's some hip hop, but it's a lot of like R&B and kind of this style of production and percussion. And like I said, My Boo by the Ghost Town DJs is maybe the most famous song from any of those compilations. But for me, I don't know if they hold up for a lot of people. Maybe people listening to this would think this music is really kind of vapid and not very good. I don't know, but I love it. It's party music to me. It's barbecue music to me. I remember when this stuff was on MTV, and I loved it as a kid, and 10, 11 years old, and I still love it here, almost 40 years old. So I had to include it.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I'm going to shift gears here to something that's a bit different, because my next pick is Johnny Cash. And when people think of Johnny Cash and covers, they think of Hurt, which I brought up earlier. But I'm going to play a song from the album that came out before Hurt, before American 4. This is from American 3, Solitary Man. And this is a cover of a song by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. So let's hear Johnny Cash doing The Mercy Seat.
My kill hands tattooed evil across its brother's fist. That filthy five, they did nothing to challenge or resist. In heaven his throne is made of gold, the ark of his testament is stowed, a throne from which I am told all history does unfold. It's made of wood and wire, and my body is on fire, and God is never far away. Into the mercy seat I climb, my head is shaved, my head is wired, and like a moth that tries to enter the bright eye, I go shuffling out of life just to hide in death a while. And anyway, I never lied, and the mercy seat is waiting, and I think my head is burning, and in a way I'm yearning to be done with all this weighing of the truth. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and anyway I told the truth, and I'm not afraid to die. And the mercy seat is burning, and I think my head is glowing.
So I talked about how with Shine, that could have been a Dolly Parton song. I think this could easily have been a Johnny Cash original, because it's a song about a guy on death row facing the electric chair, and there's all these references to God and Jesus. That's right up his alley, for sure, And again, not to be too morbid here, but this is after Johnny got sick, and it changed his voice, and he would actually die a few years later. And there's that element, too, with the refrain, and I'm not afraid to die. So there's a lot going on here. It's a very dramatic song that it builds and builds up the drama as it goes, and the piano and organ get louder and louder and crazier as it goes. So yeah, it's not his most well-known cover, but I think it's one of his best covers in my opinion, Andy.
Yeah, definitely. It's this is my favorite of the American, Rick Rubin albums from Johnny Cash, American 3, Solitary Man. I think it's probably the most consistent. Like it has some kind of obvious covers, and also some like not obvious, but it doesn't have. I mean, covering One by U2, that's a good U2 song to cover in my opinion, and I like U2, but some U2 covers and some later period U2 stuff can get pretty hard to listen to. But I think his version's great, and this cover of a Nick Cave song is great. I actually definitely shortly considered choosing "I See a Darkness," the Bonnie Prince Billy song that I think precedes this song on the album. Maybe
it does. Yes,
Bonnie Prince Billy is it's one of my favorite musicians ever. I think full stop. When I talk about my favorite musicians, Will Oldham, he's one of my favorites ever. And that "I See a Darkness" was the first time I heard Will Oldham, and then that kind of set me on the path of finding all his decades of music. But yeah, great pick. And like you said, it could be a Johnny Cash original. I think Cash and Cave are kind of not two sides of the same coin, but have kind of similar
simpatico. Yeah,
exactly, roles and themes, especially later in life. And Nick Cave's still going on today. I don't always love his new music. It's hard to listen to, which all his music's in theory kind of hard to listen to besides his ballads. But one day, maybe when he passes, which hopefully isn't too soon, I'll really get into Nick Cave more than I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nick Cave has said that this is like a personal high point of his career, having Johnny Cash do his song. And that's hard to argue. I mean, Nick is a very prolific guy in his own right with a big career, but, even your idols have idols, and they can be fanboys too at the end of the day. That's just the way it goes, Andy, So
yeah, I mean, imagine you got chosen and you're not, Tom Petty or U2 or, who else?
Neil Diamond, of course, Solitary
exactly,
Man.
But you're someone like Nick Cave or Bonnie Prince Billy or some of these other, not that Nick Cave's lesser known, he's a legend, but like not quite that U2 level. And like Johnny Cash, towards the end of his life, his revival of a career, he decides to cover you. Like, how cool is that? Like, there's very few musicians that you could be like, that would be cooler, than Johnny Cash doing that. So totally cool. And yeah, great album. I think all the American albums there that he did with Rick Rubin are pretty great. I love old Cash. I love odd, poorly produced Christian music, Johnny Cash. I love the end of his life stuff as well. So.
Yeah, I've said before that 4 is one of my favorite albums ever. I love it so much.
Yeah.
Just great stuff there, yeah. But, all right, what's your next pick there, Andy?
Well, keeping on a little bit of the country tip here, we have a cover of a 2000s era Tim McGraw song, which you would not guess was a Tim McGraw song necessarily if you heard it. It's by a musician named Sam Amidon, who's another one of my favorite musicians ever. He had an album come out almost 20 years ago called All Is Well. It's one of my favorite records of all time, probably my favorite record of the 2000s. And his whole thing is he does covers, usually of traditional kind of like... what's the word when they're in public domain? I guess that's the word. Public domain songs. There's a lot of like super old folk songs, but every now and then he'll throw in like a pop song or a country song, or he did a famous cover of R. Kelly, but a lesser known R. Kelly song. I obviously didn't choose that one for obvious reasons, but this Tim McGraw cover of My Old Friend, which is from 2004, and this album I think came out in much more recently. A great cover and nice and down tempo and great. So Sam Amidon with My Old Friend.
My old friend, I recall times we had our hanging on my wall. I wouldn't trade them for gold. They laughed and they cried me, they somehow sanctified me. They're woven in the stories I have told. Tell again, my old friend, I apologize for the years that I've passed since the last time you and I dusted off those memories, the running and the races, the people and the places. There was always somewhere else I had to be. Time gets thin, my old friend. Don't know why
Yeah, I mean, that sounds beyond, apart from kind of the end there where it gets kind of chamber music-ish and kind of modern classical sounding there with the percussion and the strings. That sounds like an old folk song, which is really what Sam Amidon does. But it's a song that's not even 10 years old by Tim McGraw. And Sam Amidon, he's got this alien Appalachian voice that not too many people sound like him. And since I first discovered him in 2006, and then have followed him since then. He just put out an album a week or so ago. That's really, really great. That's got like jazzy. He's one of my favorite people. I've seen him live a handful of times. Really, really nice guy. And just one of my favorite musicians. And this is one of my favorite covers that he does. So wanted to include it. Interpreting a Tim McGraw song that sounds quite different in the original version this way is super cool to me. So, and I'm not slagging on Tim McGraw, just this is going to be my preferred version for sure.
Yeah, I like this one a lot, definitely. I don't listen to Tim McGraw, so I didn't know who did this song originally, but I like it a lot. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a song that you would hear in like the end montage of an episode of the Netflix show Virgin River, which I do watch, by the way, and has that nice, cozy, genteel quality to it. So yeah, good stuff there. And Sam is, I believe, a New England guy from Vermont there. Yeah. So yeah, I'll check out more of his stuff for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great, and he puts out a lot of cool stuff. He produces stuff. His album from 2007, All Is Well, like I said, it's genuinely. I mean, I was telling some friends about this the other day that this might be like, it might be my favorite album ever. I never have said it's like my favorite album ever. Just thought it, but it's definitely one I've listened to the most. And one of the songs on that was our wedding song called Wedding Dress, and. Yeah, he's fantastic, and I love most of his albums. This one's actually one of his lesser albums, but it's still got a handful of great songs on it, including this one.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go back a few decades to 1970 and venture into the world of prog rock here with my boys Yes. This is from their second album, Time and a Word. And this is the opening track off that album. It's a cover of a Richie Havens song. So let's hear Yes with No Opportunity Necessary, No Experience Needed. So I've expressed my love for Yes on the show before. They haven't done a lot of covers over the years, but most of them that they have done are on the first two albums. So they've also covered the Beatles, they've covered the Byrds, Buffalo Springfield, all the B bands. And they did cover this Richie Havens song, which is a bit left field, of a pick, but I think when the lyrics are a little more abstract, they can translate to the prog rock sphere pretty well. Dawn turns to day and the dawning, daytime, nighttime, and we still can't see. Why must we wait until the morning light to wake up and be? That sounds pretty prog rock to me. I don't know about you, but but they do zhuzh it up a bit as well with the orchestra, and they do incorporate the main theme from a Gregory Peck movie called Big Country. So there's a Western flair in there as well. So yeah, I don't listen to Richie Havens really, but I do love Yes covering Richie Havens, Andy. So there you go.
Well, One of Richie Havens' most famous albums, maybe his most famous album, is called Stonehenge. So he's pretty proud.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting cover. I've never heard this before, and Yes is a band that I know that the biggest records, and I don't know them that well. I've been trying to follow along with some of the re-releases that I don't know if it's Rhino or someone's doing to have 3 or 4 discs of bonus material to them, but it's a lot to get through. But a band I want to really explore more, and Richie Havens is great, and yeah, that was a super cool, very different from my last pick, but really a nice contrast, and yeah, very very cool one that I'm completely unfamiliar with. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is like a really early Yes too, with the lineup, because it's Peter Banks on guitar and Tony Kaye on the keyboards, and then the next album Steve Howe comes in for guitar, and then after that Rick Wakeman comes in on the 4th album with Fragile, and that would be like the classic Yes lineup.
Right.
So
that's the stuff that I know. Right. So
yeah, and they did Roundabout and Heart of the Sunrise, Long Distance Runaround, all those songs. There you go. And after that, I think they only did one more cover that they put out, which was America by Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh, right.
Which made the top 50 in the charts. So there you go. Yeah. But yeah, Yes are well known for their original songs, but they did do covers as well. So there you go. But, all right, Andy, what is your second to last pick?
All right, keeping it kind of personal and keeping it still kind of in that lower tempo, kind of folk country vein as we get close to closing out, as a cover of a song that I don't think is very famous, but is by a very, very famous songwriter. It's originally by Carole King, and the song is called Child of Mine. It's on her first album, I believe, which is funny because Carole King had been writing songs for like 10 years prior to her first album and had like a dozen or so high charting hits. That was what she was known as. She's one of those brill building pop and songwriters, and wrote songs for a lot of early soul groups in the 60s. But her first album came out in the either 1970 or the early 1970s and had this song on it. And this musician, Kayla Ann, who I discovered in 2018 or 2019, kind of a newish singer-songwriter, country singer, really just great voice, similar to kind of Nancy Griffith in that way, has 3 really great albums that I enjoy. She just released this as a random song kind of to her daughter in 2022, a really great cover, and I found it, and I had my child Otis in 2022 as well, and so it's just a song that is emotional to me. Not going to cry on air or anything like that, but it's a beautiful cover of a really great and kind of lesser known song, I think. So this is Child of Mine by Michaela Ann.
You don't need direction, know which way to go, but I don't wanna hold you back, just wanna watch you grow. You're the one who taught me you don't have to look behind. Oh yes, sweet darling, so glad you are a child of mine, child of mine, child of mine. Oh yes, sweet darling, so glad you are a child of mine. Nobody wants to kill your dreams or tell you how to live your life. There'll always be people who make it.
Yeah, so that was Child of Mine by Michaela Ann. And again, Michaela Ann's kind of this, I don't want to say up and coming, because I don't think she's ever going to necessarily like break through to the mainstream, but she's a singer-songwriter, activist, mom, podcaster, person who I love on the internet, who has really good kind of modern country-ish music that sounds, not dissimilar from like, dozens of other musicians that you have like in your hometown. You could go to open mics or places and see these awesome musicians play kind of similar music, but her voice and her playing and her songwriting in particular really is great. And then her interpretations of songs. This is a good cover. And she has a couple of other great covers. I almost chose a cover that she did of the Emmylou Harris song "Me and Willie." Just came out like a couple of weeks ago. but I wanted to include a little bit about my kid here, so chose this one. And just a really beautiful, simple, emotional cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say, I don't remember the Guns N' Roses version being this tender. Oh, wait a minute, that's a different song.
Oh, you got me. You had to get one of those jokes.
Whackity schmackity doo. Yeah, I don't have a kid, so this probably does not connect with me as much as it would you, Andy, and others, I'm sure. But it's still a really nice song, and Carole King, look, her resume speaks for itself, I think. We don't have to go over her accolades. She's written not only a bunch of hit songs for herself, but many other people, too.
She has something like 150 charting songs.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that Brill building churned out a lot of hits, between her, Jerry Goffin, Neil Diamond, Burt Bacharach, Neil Sedaka, a lot of heavy hitters in that building over the years for sure. But yeah, this is just a really nice song, Andy. That's kind of all I got about this one. So
yeah. So just something different, something a little lighter in a way, heavy and light at the same time, but shining on a great musician. Maybe the people who kind of like modern country and folk who don't know Michaela Ann will go and check her out because she's pretty great.
Mm-hmm. So my last two picks here are both Led Zeppelin covers. The first one's from a movie. It was in the trailer and opening credits of the David Fincher remake of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who did the soundtrack, and Karen O, lead singer of the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and this is their version of Immigrant Song. So yeah, you've got Nine Inch Nails, Karen O, one of my favorite Zeppelin songs. It is an amuse-bouche of things I like. And the original is already great. The original is already this action-packed Nordic song with galloping rhythm. This is just putting an industrial, electronic, heavily modulated spin on things. And I gotta say, at the end of that there, when Karen O is doing all that moaning, bit spicy in the mix, I'd say.
Yeah, well, I mean, the original is too.
For sure. But
I never thought about. I somehow have never heard this cover. I feel like I listened to these soundtracks, but maybe I just don't remember it, or I don't know. But I definitely haven't seen the movies. But I never thought about Karen O as like a Robert Plant, replacement or cover artist, and she's awesome. That's perfect. Like that's a really great fit.
Yeah, I remember when the trailer first popped up and this song played, I was like, that's Karen O. I know that voice.
Yeah, she's very iconic.
I know that Maps lady anywhere. I'm sure of it. But yeah, this collaboration here is straight up cool. It's just really cool. And it is so wild to me just to see like Trent Reznor has become like this acclaimed and prominent film composer along with Atticus Ross. And Trent's a very talented guy, but until Social Network came out, he was just, Nine Inch Nails guy to me. Like, he was the guy who yelled, "I want to fuck you like an animal." Yeah. And now he's got 2 Oscars. He's got 2 Golden Globes, an Emmy. He's like 1 Tony away from an EGOT. It's pretty hard to believe there, Andy.
Who would have thought in the 90s that 2 popular musicians or groups that would have had Oscars would have been 9 Inch Nails and 3 6 Mafia? Like it's crazy. So it's he's what a cool pivot in his career. 9 Inch Nails I've seen live, one of the best live bands there ever is, and I'm hoping with their new announced tour that I can try and sneak something in. But awesome band, and I don't listen to a lot of the soundtrack stuff. I'm not that interested in modern soundtracks, but it is it's awesome to see what he's done and see the acclaim, because he's got it kind of figured out. Him and Atticus there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always interesting to see people from the pop music world or the non-cinema world kind of cross over into that, sphere and do composing. Like, I just listened the other day to the Daft Punk soundtrack for Tron Legacy.
Awesome.
Which is great, and I know Johnny Greenwood has done a bunch of, film composing stuff too. So, it is interesting and just plain fun to think that the guy who screamed fist fuck in a song is now like this, serious film composer of all things. So it's just pretty funny there. But yeah, again, great cover of Immigrant Song there. And that leads us to your last pick of the episode, Andy. What you got for us?
Well, before I get to that real quick, I want to say we could have had 3 Led Zeppelin covers in a row, because I think my last, I also had a Ike and Tina song that I think they cover. It was going to be a Whole Lot of Love.
Oh, okay.
That I was going to have. It's a live version of that, and just awesome. Tina Turner vocal, Ike playing guitar, and that was other than the one that I actually cut after I sent you my original list. That was my actual last cut. So we could have had even more Zeppelin covers, but I'm glad that I cut it now. All right. Anyway, getting back to my last song. This is a new song, and I had to include this guy. Again, one of my favorite musicians of all time, and that's Willie Nelson. One of the great interpreters of song, and one of the great musicians whose songs have been interpreted by countless musicians from country to not country. Obviously, the way he writes and the way he sings, his songs lean to country covers. But he also has done probably hundreds and hundreds of covers at this time, because looking right now on Rate Your Music, of official release studio albums, he has 126 studio albums. And that's, hundreds of, or dozens of live albums, hundreds of singles, hundreds of, all this other stuff. So he's got a lot of music. But he did put out a record last year called Last Leaf on the Tree. That was pretty good. He's putting out music still, which is crazy. And kind of, he puts out almost 2 records a year, and usually one of them is quite good and one of them is pretty forgettable. Sometimes he still can put out something great. But on this, and this was the first thing that was released as this album was getting ready to come out, was a cover of the pretty famous song by the Flaming Lips, Do You Realize? And I was like, this can't work. And then I pushed play, and I was like, holy shit, this works. A more down-tempo, kind of more gentle ballad song for the Flaming Lips. And Willie makes it a Willie song. And I just had to include Willie, and I had to include this cover.
Do you realize that you have the most beautiful face? Do you realize we're floating in space? Do you realize the happiness makes you cry? Do you realize everyone you know someday will die?
So that was Do You Realize, the Flaming Lips cover by Willie Nelson. I don't know how you could listen to that and not know it's Willie Nelson. All 91 years of him at this point. And he's starting to sound like it. I think he's started to sound old in the last 10 years, but he's sounding quite old. And, I don't imagine he keeps up the amount of records that he releases too many more years here. He's probably getting towards the end of his career. But yeah, a really cool album. I don't know if every song on this album is a cover. I believe so, and a lot of them are more modern. Like there's a cover of "Lost Cause" by Beck on this album. That's also really, really good and pretty heartbreaking, based on his age and just the point of that song. But I just love this as a real highlight from last year as far as one of my favorite songs. So that's my last cover choice. And yeah, I don't know. That's Willie Nelson, one of my favorite ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the last episode, I played a song from the other album that he put out last year, The Border. And I talked about how, Willie's old, weathered voice at this stage, it lends some real gravitas to his songs. And that's very true here, too, I think, because, it's one thing for middle-aged Wayne Coyne to sing, "Do you realize that everyone you know someday will die?" It's another for 91-year-old Willie Nelson to sing it, because, if you live long enough, it's a much truer statement. And you take out the neo-psychedelic style of the Flaming Lips and replace it with this much more grounded country style, it does make it a more powerful song. Not in terms of volume, but just in terms of that, emotional weight and emotional heft to it, Andy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that The Border, that album's awesome. So I was just kind of saying, like, that is a fantastic album. And Last Leaf on the Tree, which was this one, good, but not great, as cover albums often are, good and the bad. But even that title, Last Leaf on the Tree, like, I think Willie's now,
it's pretty spelled out there. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So he's still around. I mean, his first album, I think, came out in 1960. His first album, he was writing in the 50s. So 1962 was his first album, and he was writing, as early as the late 50s. So not many have ever done it like him. And yeah, I wanted to end this with him.
All right. Well, my last pick is another Zeppelin cover here, and it's also a live cut. And it's not just a fantastic cover, it's also one of my favorite live performances ever. It's from the Kennedy Center Honors in 2012. That was the year they honored Led Zeppelin. And one of the performers was Heart, Anna Nancy Wilson, with Jason Bonham on drums. And they did Stairway to Heaven. And the clip I picked is towards the end of the song, and I'll explain why in a moment here. But yeah, let's hear Heart doing Stairway to Heaven. So the original Stairway, I don't think I need to hear that song ever again. I've heard it a million times, but I always come back to this cover.
Yeah.
A, because it's Heart, and they're just awesome.
Yes.
B, I love the big choir that comes in at the end. And C, if you watch the video of this performance, watch Led Zeppelin's reaction to this song. Because as this song goes on, they keep cutting back to Zeppelin in the balcony. And Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones have these big smiles on their faces, and Jimmy Page is rocking out to it. Robert Plant, though, is sitting there, and he's just kind of stone-faced. He's not really reacting all that much. But right at the end, when Ann Wilson does that huge "to be a rock and not to roll," they cut to a close-up of Robert Plant, and you can see tears forming in his eyes. And, that's the power of this song. Even the guy who sang this song, 1,000 times, I'm sure, even he is floored by this performance. So, yeah, the original Stairway, it's one of the biggest songs of all time, but this version of it, I think, is right up there with it. I think it's, to borrow a word from you, Andy, iconic.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
I did coin
so
that, yeah. Yeah, awesome. I don't remember, I know I've seen performances or highlights from this Kennedy Center Honors, but I did see that it is available in full online, so I'll have to watch this soon. Yeah, I mean, if there's any, I don't say there's any, but if there's a handful of people who can, again, kind of emulate and match, peak Robert Plant, the Wilsons got to be up there, right? So, Heart is great, great band. Yeah, and that was beautiful with the choir, so really cool version. I don't think I've heard or seen this performance, so I'm definitely gonna want to watch it. That sounds really powerful. Maybe I'll skip through the Kid Rock cover that I see is on there, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think at one point they cut to other people in the crowd, and you can see like Michelle Obama just grooving her head to the song. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, but yeah, other tributes besides Kid Rock, Lenny Kravitz did "Whole Lotta Love," and Foo Fighters did "Black Dog" and "Rock and Roll." So yeah, there you go. But yeah, those were our picks. Those were the covers, and that was the episode. Andy, man, thanks so much again for being on here. As always, it was just a total blast talking to you about music, and it's always fun whenever you're on here. So thanks, man.
Yeah, I'm glad it finally worked out, and I know you've tried to get me on in the past, and my life is chaotic. I'm not much more chaotic than anyone else's, but sometimes recording is hard with a young one and moving and some family stuff. But glad it worked out. I'm glad we had this space. Hopefully it sounds good to the listeners. And yeah, it was a blast to be here and talk, not real music, but non-wrestling music with you for once. So I'm happy to do that, and it inspires me to start my own thing up here soon. So hopefully I'll be doing that, because I love talking about music with people I like.
Cool. Well, any plugs you want to give, go right ahead.
Yeah. So those of you who do know me, if you're listening on this, like Andrew said at the beginning, I used to contribute to Voices of Wrestling. I don't anymore. I hardly watch wrestling. I do here and there, and it's super inconsistent. I definitely don't write about it. Even when I was writing about it, I didn't like it, but I did write about it because I had to get something out, but I do write about music semi-regularly. I have a Substack called Warm Pathways, and that's at warmpathways.substack.com. I don't have like a consistent schedule like a lot of Substack newsletter writers where I'm out, 2 times a week or every week or things like that. It's kind of as I can. I have some big projects there, but I cover anything from hardcore music that our mutual buddy Kevin has made a list of 100 essential like hardcore punk records for me to check out that I've been kind of going through over the past year. I did a year-end list at the end of the year. I did a bunch of records from 2004, revisiting it, one of my first ever top 50 albums of the year list. And I have some projects on the horizon. I don't know what form it takes. I think my writing's pretty good. It doesn't get technical. It just kind of is like, hey, this is good. I love it, and you should check it out. But that's warmpathways.substack.com.
All right. Well, Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find out all the great shows on there. Voicesofwrestling.com, previews, reviews, articles, things of that nature. We're on Bluesky at Music of the Mat, personal page at Just Andrew. We are no longer on Twitter. The accounts are deactivated for good. It's for the best.
Good job.
Really.
It's been great. I thought I was going to really, really miss it, and it's been, 4 months now, and I haven't. I'm not hardly on Bluesky either, but it's good. I'm happy more people are doing that.
Just gotta do other things to fill the time, man.
Yes.
Movies, TV, podcasts like these. Just gotta do whatever it takes, man, to preoccupy your time. Yeah, but if you want to leave a comment about this episode or share your picks, voicesofwrestling.com/Discord. Andy, you're in the Discord too, chatting away, making people angry.
Yeah, mostly just in music and sometimes a couple of other things there, but I got to try and stop making people angry.
That's okay, Andy. I still love you. It's okay.
Thanks, buddy. I'm outspoken.
Yeah. I keep forgetting to plug this as well. I post the Spotify playlists of each episode like the day after they come out in the show's Discord channel. So if you want to listen to the songs for each episode in just a handy-dandy Spotify playlist, I have them all. Some of the songs are not available on Spotify, so they're not in the playlist, unfortunately. but everything else should be accounted for. So again, these are all at voicesofwrestling.com/Discord in the show's Discord channel. Just scrolling up to find different playlists. You'll find them all eventually. And of course, make sure you subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast player of choice, and leave a nice rating and review. All right, the playout song for today. It's a real rough world out there right now. A lot of strife, a lot of hardship, and it's important to remember that it's not always hard. Sometimes it's easy. Easy like Sunday morning. And who better to relay that sentiment than Mike Patton and the boys from Faith No More, with a very straightforward cover of the Commodore song, This Is Easy by Faith No More. Thanks again, Andy.
Thank you.
No, it sounds funny, but I just can't stand the pain. Girl, I'm leaving you tomorrow. Seems to me, girl, you know I've done all I can. You see a big store and a borrow. Yeah, that's why I'm easy. Like Sunday morning, yeah. That's why I'm easy, I'm easy like Sunday morning.
Music of the Mat is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. The songs used throughout this show are property of their respective copyright holders.
My name is Tyler Fornes, and I am one of the co-hosts of the Good, the Bad, and the Hungy AEW podcast here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. We take a broad scope approach to the world of All Elite Wrestling and the entire universe of Tony Khan. We talk about the big matches, the big stars, the promos, the storylines. And we also look at it from a big picture perspective. How are things going to change over the course of the next 10 years with AEW still in the picture? How are companies like WWE going to adapt and adjust to AEW? Are they going to be a similar way like they did with WCW in the late 1990s? Will there be a counterpunch? We talk about all of that and more on The Good, the Bad, and the Hungy every week on the Voice of Wrestling Network.